Hi, everybody. How's it going? This is awesome, isn't it? Like, this is seriously amazing. I did not picture myself on this kind of stage, and I'm here for it. This is great. Well, thank you all for being here. We're going to talk about, is atomic design dead? That's my clickbait title for the day that got you here, so mission accomplished. But I would like to take you all on a little bit of a journey. So, websites. That's why we're here, right? You know websites? Any website fans here? Okay, all right. So, world first website, Tim Berners-Lee, 1991, right? 1994, GeoCities. If we were making things for the web during that time, this was it. It was like HTML, CSS, JavaScript. No JavaScript yet, sorry, just like HTML, kind of, sort of CSS, right? That hit the scene, 93? Then this thing came along, Photoshop. People are like, oh, we could use Photoshop to design a website, right? Creating Killer Websites was a book, 1996. We sliced up these websites and we threw them on the internet. Rounded corners, had to slice out each corner. There's some old people here. That was good. Great. And then, kind of by like the mid-90s, it's like, oh, this internet thing is sticking around, right? This isn't just a trend. So we actually started making more websites, right? Now we have the website for the company and the intranet for the for the company, right? So now we have two designs. We got two websites, okay. And then there's this thing that's been around for a long time, right? Since the 50s, 60s, brand books and brand guidelines. Here's the logo. Here's how you use it. The white space around the logo. Here's our color palette, and it's like, here, do stuff with this. Internet and designers would have to figure it out, right? Then all of a sudden we get the kind of Web 2.0 era, right? 2004, we got web standards, we got jQuery hitting the scene 2005. We've got all sorts of these new technologies. Now all of a sudden it's not just like, here's the brochure website, here's an honest to goodness, living, breathing, interactive application, right? So now, okay, we're throwing things on the pile, right? 2007, Steve Jobs gets out on stage, right? Introduces the iPhone. Android comes around, well, actually a little before that, but around the same time. 2008, the Play Store comes around. Now all of a sudden, everybody's like, apps. We need apps. Get us in the App Store, right? We need to be there. So, all right, so now we have more Photoshop files to power those things, right? Then all of a sudden, 2010, Sketch hits the scene, starts kind of taking over. Still some Sketch fans in the house, all right, it's great. But all of a sudden we're like, oh yeah, turns out that, we can put layer copy 46 in another tool, not just Photoshop anymore. But kind of around this time, this is where things start getting interesting because we kind of have, with the exception of maybe like YUI by the team at Yahoo, there wasn't a lot of like talk about components and stuff, but around this time, 2010, 2011, that starts changing. Bootstrap kind of comes out and developers start reaching for Bootstrap to help them make websites a little better. And also this around this time, like 2009, 2010, this kind of area, you have people like Natalie Down and Anna Debenham, sort of introducing this idea of kind of, modular web design. Nathan Curtis, who's teaching a website or a workshop here later on, he wrote a book called Modular Web Design. So around this time, it was like, people are starting to think about components. CSS methodologies like OOCSS and Nicole Sullivan, SMAX by Jonathan Snook, other people like that started thinking about things in terms of more modular systems, right? And then we get this stuff hitting the scene, right? We get kind of 2012, Angular comes onto the scene, right? And so it's like around this time, it's like we're starting to get these more sort of modular frameworks and things like that. And it's around this time that I created this thing called Atomic Design. And 2 weeks later, there's this thing called React that came out. It's just pretty wild. And kind of along with that kind of came this. And with React, it was like everything is a component. And like all of a sudden, it's just like we all got component crazy, right? But you could see we keep adding things, right? And all of a sudden, they're like, these brand books aren't cutting it anymore. We actually kind of need more sort of UX and UI kits and sticker sheets and PSD UI kits and stuff like that, right? But what happens after this? We get React. Whew, React, holy smokes. That kind of took off, right? And everybody's like, React, 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 React. Let's make some more React stuff. But it's kind of around this time that it's like, oh, we could actually, thanks to ES modules that hit the scene somewhere, 2015, it was like, oh, now we could actually import these components. We could have a standalone library and actually directly import this into our projects, right? And so that changes things. That's our first like little solid line here. So there's a direct connection where here's a React library and we're importing that into our React app, right? And then this starts happening with these other things where you could kind of have this like pattern library that's kind of the spiritual guide for this stuff, and then you actually have these technology-specific implementations of it. And yeah, so all of a sudden, things start getting a little bit more complicated. Then our good friend Figma hits the scene in 2016. And the next year, they introduced these things called libraries. So now all of a sudden, it's like it only took 25 years for design tool makers to go, holy shit, do you know that sometimes designers work with other designers? We should probably do something about that, right? So, but yeah, very welcome addition to the scene. And it's kind of like around this time, right? Like it's kind of like 2015, 2016, 2017 that we're like, all of this, we're going to rearrange this, and we're going to call this stuff a design system, right? So we're going to kind of take our pattern libraries, take our little Sketch and Figma libraries, and we're going to sort of clump those things together. And then over here are these sort of products, right? So that's like a big change in how this all works. And like kind of coming along for the ride is like the documentation, the reference website for all of that stuff. We get design tokens entering the scene that sort of feed out into code in our design tools and our reference website and could actually be ingested by native apps and stuff like that. Right? And then what now? We just like kind of keep making new shit. Like it just keeps, it doesn't stop. It never ends. And it's just like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. So from a technology perspective, this gets untenable pretty quickly. So web components hit the scene and kind of remove the need, not saying that you can't still do it, but it removes the need to have to build the same freaking accordion again and again and again just because it's Angular and just because it's React, right? So with web components, we're actually able to feed out a single source of truth from the code standpoint to any of our products that use them, which is really great. What happens from here? Figma just eats Sketch's lunch, just totally obliterates them. That's not entirely true, but boy, oh boy, that was a thing, right? So we'll just like simplify that a little bit. So we're talking about Figma here. And then tools like another sponsor here, Zero Height, come along, and instead of like the docs just being this kind of off to the side floating thing, you can now kind of pull in your sort of Figma files, you can pull in your storybooks and stuff like that, and display them all, so it's all a little more connected now, and this is pretty fascinating. But then, like Vitaly said, this stuff's getting more complex, so it's like we have a core design system, and like we covered yesterday in my workshop, it's this idea of kind of like recipes or like child design systems that are more like product specific that kind of build on top of the core design system. But anyways, what we're ultimately talking about, where we're at in the year 2024, in October, whatever this is, we have got design systems and we've got products that use those design systems, right? And all of that nonsense there is really meant to create a relationship between here is this reusable set of components, standards, UX best practices, brand best practices, front-end best practices, everything best practices, accessibility best practices baked in to this thing, and then products use and consume that thing. They are informed and influenced by what's in the design system. And then the other side of the virtuous circle is that the products inform and influence what goes in the design system, right? This is the yin and yang of design system stuff. Turns out, really hard to get right, as we might know, right? You got a number of things that tend to happen. You got the pattern police coming after you. You're doing it wrong, right? Compliance. You're not design system compliant, right? And then there's the other side of it, which is the product's just like, hump. Like, you're mine now, right? And the design system just kind of gets swept up in just whatever the product is doing, right? That's its own Pac-Man rule. But I think that one of the biggest things that I've seen ever since we've kind of reshuffled those things around, right, into this idea of a design system is this distance grow between design systems and the products they serve. So now we're talking about design system adoption, and we're talking about how do we do this? Like, nobody's using the system, and how do we do this? Like, this is what, we help organizations of all shapes and sizes, like, with this. But it's like, well, it's because you're isolated from one another, right? And this is a problem for a lot of reasons. But this, why, kind of bringing it back to this, like achieving this balance, requires a real sort of, action-reaction, a cause and effect, this virtuous circle of like, you're building things, you're contributing to the system, you're building things with the system, and you're just doing this again and again. And it's establishing that virtuous cycle that is really so important. So to answer the question posed by the title of my talk is like, is atomic design dead? Like, this is what atomic design was and continues to be. Is like, here's the design system, and you're able to sort of draw a straight line through how that design system goes and powers real products, right? Not just real products, but like, here's this page with this specific state with this stuff in it, and here's this other page with this other stuff in it, and you're able to sort of see all of this stuff hanging together, and we're able to sort of zoom in and out because of what this methodology, what this mental model sort of provides, right? So here's a good friend, Instagram. Yes, Vitaly is still around. And like, the Instagram design team, I'm sure, could like have created all of this stuff in isolation, but it's really only through the lens of the product that they're creating and all of this user-generated content, right? Like, they have to account for, is a square image, is this a landscape image, is this a portrait image, is this, all of those things, is the user handle 7 characters, is it 45 characters? Like, can you even have 45 characters, right? These are important decisions that they need to make, and all of those things that happen at the product level inform and influence what goes in the system. And in turn, what goes in the system informs and influences what that product can be, right? So it can't be this we're over here, and it's challenging because I recognize that what happened, and I'm guilty as charged at like advocating for design systems as a thing. We need to finance these things. We need teams. We need resources. We need time. We need effort. We need energy expended on this thing. So design systems are a thing, and they need to be valued, right? But at the same time, like, we sort of lost the plot. We went inwards, and we're just like, this is really freaking fun to just hang out and just like stress over border radius values. And Figma introduced new ways of us to stress out about border radius values. So we're going to be over here, we'll put on our headphones, and we're just going to be dinking around, making components and variants. Nobody wants to use our system, right? So it's like, this is the thing, right? But the thing is that this way that I've been doing things since 2013 and helping people do and helping organizations do since 2013 still holds true. All these years later, like tools like Storybook, incredible tools, but 9 times out of 10 or 10 times out of 10 really, like Storybook is like, here's the button. And you're like, cool, all right. But like, these environments are really powerful environments. I was showing this yesterday at my workshop, so I wanted to show it here. But it's like, this is work that we did. This is for PetSmart, whatever, pet food. But we're able to like actually build the design system through the lens of building and shipping real production-ready front-end code, right? Like this isn't wired up to their CMS. This isn't like hooked up to their back-end systems or APIs or anything like that. But what we're able to do in atomic design land is be able to say, here's what the system does. Here's what it produces. Here's how it functions. Here's how it looks. And from there, the handoff becomes, here back-end developers kind of wire this up. This is good to go from a front-end perspective. All of this is available to us. In Figma, it's even easier. But again, we have isolated ourselves. We've segmented ourselves away. And so we're like floating on these little islands. And so I guess my advice is like, bring these worlds closer together, both at a tool level, sure, but above all of that, at a real human level, right? The job of design system designers is not to sort of go inward in futz with border radius values. It really is to go outward. It is to be a service organization. Hey, product teams, how can I help you? Like, what do you need? How can we serve you? Like it has to be that. So, atomic design, still relevant all these years later. I might even say more relevant if I'm being egotistical. Okay. But so, like we've talked about, here's where we're at. Here's what we're all doing, right? Who's building a date picker here? That's too many hands, friends. That's too many hands. So there's this irony, right? We're all doing the same fucking thing. And you're like, you guys can compare date pickers after the talk, and you can see how similar or different they are, right? Like, so when you do this enough, you're like, oh my God, this again, right? So my proposition is maybe we shouldn't all be building the same freaking date picker for the 17th time, right? What if there was just a date picker component, and what if there was all of the common things we see in design systems today, and we kind of build it once, we put our heads together, we sort it out, we ship it, and we use it. That would be nice, right? Thank you. One guy. So we floated this idea out there. We've been sort of talking about this, and people are like, well, isn't that what HTML is? And the answer is kinda, but also not. Right? I think of HTML tags and HTML elements as kind of like the dowel rods and the screws of stuff, of IKEA stuff. And that's what we do. It's not like, currently today, it's like, here's our dowel rods, here's our screws, dump them on the table and go, here, developers, go build a Malm. And we suck at it. Really bad. So there's this thing that comes out every year called the WebAIM Million that basically is just this I just pictured them doing this audit where they basically scrape the top 1,000,000 websites of the world and see how many accessibility issues they encounter. And it's something like 50 per page. And it's just like, I just picture them with just like whiskey and they're just depressed every year. But it's like, we're really bad at this. So like, clearly like the tools we have, while important, right, insufficient, right? That's why we're all rebuilding the date picker, right? So my proposition is we need more like prefab, ready to drop in kind of things, right? But also stuff that gives us like a lot of control. So team at OpenUI, which is kind of adjacent to the W3C, they've been like doing all this work for years to basically kind of round up and do research around popular design systems. And here's all the popular design systems and what components are in them. So that's kind of where we're at, is like, okay, well, let's try to create this. And what's really challenging is that we need to create this for the world. You know how hard it is to make a design system for your company, or maybe even just your product. It's like, that's all hard enough already. But what we're talking about is the world, and what does the world need? But when we sort of peel this back, it's like, what might this look like? These are like totally just, hypotheticals here. But it's like, what if there was just like an alert with an error variant, and you're able to slot in sort of your content, button groups, date picker fields for all you people. It's like, hey, there you go. You don't have to do that anymore, right? Text fields. And so what would this look like? One of the big things that one of the issues with adopting Material Design or Bootstrap is that they ship with like a default aesthetic, right? And that's obviously needed, but a lot of times people hack the shit out of them in order to bend it into the shape of the company that you need, right? So this stuff would ship as just kind of pretty close to the metal, just unstyled. Here's a global design system component. And then from there, we get to use our good friends' design tokens, publish those, whatever we want. We could have different themes, a little theme library or whatever, and then sort of pass those through the web components, right? So we've been, for the last, not quite year, but we've been sort of working about this. We've been talking about this, writing about it. But we've also connected with OpenUI's chair. This is Greg Whitworth. He's an amazing guy, works at Salesforce, was the chair of OpenUI, and he's like, yeah, that's what we've been trying to do. Let's do it. So basically where we're at is like, this is actively happening, and you could get involved. So if this all sounds interesting to you, if you want to contribute to something greater than yourself, now is a good time to do it, right? But I do want to sort of stress this. It's like, what's interesting to me about this, for a number of reasons, is like, one, let's not waste everybody's time here. But two, we are all people on the web. I believe in the web. All these years later, after all of the sort of trials and tribulations and ups and downs and stuff, I still believe in the ideals of the web. And when you think about what we do on the web, we are contributing to something greater than ourselves. And it's amazing. And we have this attitude that is kind of unparalleled when it comes to collaboration, communication on a scale that the world has never seen, right? Academia, some other places, they're open, they're sharing things, but often there's like some political stuff like open source software, things like this is really kind of the best of humanity. And I think we're at this place where we really need to be sort of rekindling the ideals of the early web, because it's still there. And the other thing is that we get to be models for collaboration, communication, and openness, and sort of, contributing to stuff bigger than ourselves, right? We're all plugged in at different, in different sectors of different companies, and we get to be the models. So I think that's really exciting. Now let's switch gears. So that's one thing, global design system. How do we make a more respectful use of people's time? And then I get to be the first person of the day to talk about AI. Probably won't be the last. But this really rocked our worlds, huh? Right? Oh, yeah. So this whole thing has hit the scene like a bomb, and we are all figuring out what to do with it. Now, in the spirit of let's not build the date picker component for the umpteenth time or whatever, how do we sort of create efficiency? How do we create reuse? How do we not have to sort of grind our gears just to sort of get to where we're trying to go? There's a lot of potential here for AI to facilitate design system work, right, to help us make design systems better. So what we can do is we could feed in all of our design system conventions and what we care about, and we can sort of plug that in and actually create tools that can generate design system component code. So this is my colleague Kevin Coyle, who's based over in the UK. And he is demonstrating, we did like a little online event. It's okay if the audio's not working, but it's not working. But whatever. What he's doing is he's showing a specification. We're able to sort of feed that through an AI system. And what the result is he is able to show the generated result of that. I'm sure a lot of us have sort of used tools like ChatGPT and stuff in order to generate components, in order to generate stuff, and it'll do like an okay job at it. And that's kind of what's happening here. But the big difference here is that this is being sort of trained and using the grain of the design systems convention. So anybody can fire up ChatGPT right now and generate that date picker component, but obviously there's a big difference between that thing existing and that thing like really meeting your organization's, your company's sort of standards of quality, accessibility, and so on and so forth. So this is what's like really fascinating here, is that we're able to sort of use this stuff to help accelerate our component generation work. In addition to that, we do a lot of stuff, as Vitaly mentioned. People are consolidating design systems, translating between design systems, supporting multiple tech stacks, stuff like that. So this is my brother Ian, also just sort of demonstrating, like, here's a React storybook environment and React code base, and what he's doing is sort of basically just describing how just with kind of the push of a button, we're able to just kind of lift everything over. It's like, hey, React, turn this into web components, and it does just fine, right? These things are really, 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 really good at translating a thing into other things, right? So this is like a really potent, powerful use case for this stuff, right? Where we were just able to sort of describe what a date picker does, like in the form, and that's what Kevin was showing. It's just like a YAML file. It's not code. It's not like you're just saying, here's what a date picker does. Here's what I needed to do. By the way, I want you to sort of gray out these areas, you know, for these popular holidays, and it'll do it, right? Pretty wild, and then it basically comes out the other end in functional code in whatever language you need it in. So that like design system generation, that inward-facing stuff has proven to be really, really helpful. What's also been really, really fascinating is, and a lot of the work that we've been doing with clients has been to help them increase adoption of the design system, as that seems to be a thing that they're really struggling with, right, the world over. Like we talked about, it's like, okay, we're over here working on the design system, people aren't using it, this is hard and complicated. Well, how can we make it not hard and not complicated, right? So there's some really interesting things that we can do. We could basically say, here is an existing website, here's an existing design that's a mess, and we'll run it through the systems, and we will sort of get design system-powered experiences coming out the other end. So just as an example of this, like I did the quickest thing, and I like wanted to keep the results as like kind of pure to what the output actually was at first stab at it, just to show you. So I just took Nike's checkout process and I said, here, turn this into the design system powered version of that experience. And it did a pretty damn good job, right? Those are all the design system components. Under the hood, when you like look at, okay, here's what they had, right? And then here's what it generated with the web components from our design system, right? In addition to that, like what we've been doing with clients has been sort of leaning into, okay, well, how can this help? A lot of this stuff has been a little easier on the code end, just because it's like it's text, it's characters and stuff like that. But we've been leaning in and helping our clients with design work as well, where it's like, okay, here's our design system, here's some input, and here's what we want to create. And now we can actually sort of generate design system designs. So this is in Figma, and we just kind of feed it a sketch, but it doesn't even have to be a sketch. It could just be like a little text box that says, make me a home page. Or it could be a more fleshed out wireframe, or it can be, again, like a legacy Figma design or whatever. And what it will do is it will parse and interpret that image and then rebuild it in the likeness using the design system. And in addition to that, right, back to the code end of things, we're able to sort of do the same thing in code, where we're able to say, here's our components, here's what props are available, here's what shape they take, right? And then also here's this other input, and then you're able to feed it whatever you want. So here's another just example using Claude, which is an available tool just on the web. And what we've done is create a Claude project, pretty easy to do, and just say, here's the design system conventions, and please make me this homepage that has these kind of like fall things going on here. So it's going to rip through that, and you can see it's producing DS grid, DS card, DS, right, those are the design system components. And coming out the other end of it, when we check that into Storybook, well, there you go, right? And again, this is like first stab. I think like one of the other sort of biggest things that we've learned as we've been sort of doing this, oh yeah, by the way, it's like because it's all wired up to the design system architecture, it's all multi-themed and, you know, all that good stuff. Pretty cool, right? So again, this isn't like the fact that LLM tools can generate code is a shocker to no one by this point. But the fact that it's like, oh, you can actually steer it into and use the constraints, the sturdy and settled and well-considered constraints of the design system to prevent it from going all over the place like a garden hose with nobody holding it, or like hallucinating, or doing a bunch of stuff that's just like random. Like ChatGPT like really wants me to create Tailwind-powered React apps. And I'm like, yeah, how about just do it in HTML? And they're like, okay, I could do that too, I guess. Right? So it's like with the design system, you're basically sort of giving it those constraints. And what's really fascinating about that result is a really potent combination, because these things can tear through this, create stuff, generate stuff, translate stuff, but whenever you're saying it should come out in this shape using these building blocks, it does a really damn good job. So what we've been doing with our clients has been kind of like bringing this closer to the tooling and making this a little bit more integrated into designers' workflows as well as developer workflows. And so like this is some client work that we've been doing where same deal, here's a sketch of this thing, and it's going through. This is a Figma plugin that we helped develop. And it's like, boom, there's the code version of it. Tim Paul in the UK, GovUK has a really great design system. United Kingdom government has a lot of PDFs. And so he's like, okay, well, we could just throw those PDFs at these tools and translate them into these design system-powered web experiences that do the same thing. And you're like, oh, okay. Right? And what's worth saying is that like probably GovUK's design system is like second to none when it comes to like accessibility, like a real focus on accessibility for GovUK's design system. So this is a big win. But again, he's also demonstrating it's like it doesn't have to be a PDF. It could just be a sketch. It could just be a prompt. It could just be like any of these things. This is really, really powerful and also a little scary, huh? This is my partner, Josh Clark. I'm very lucky to have him along for this crazy ride because he's been working with design and AI for close to a decade now, and really sort of talking about how these things ultimately are tools. These are design materials that we all get to use, right? We have access to them, and it's our job as designers to help say, well, what do we do with these design materials? I know that Luke will be talking later, and I know that he'll be sort of showing that as well. But Josh is writing a book called Sentient Design, and what he's talking about is how we can sort of take our design systems, take our context, take the user's context, right, and use these tools to take the user's context plus the design systems plus any other context that we're giving it, and to create really radically personalized and individualized experiences, right? So what happens if you're a healthcare company and you know that your users have certain pre-existing conditions or a certain type of color blindness or a certain type of motor disability or whatever? How might our product experiences bend and morph to accommodate them, right? What if we have different language skills or different, we speak different languages, like either, like based on where we're from, or we're just like used to or prefer different things, right? We now have the tools available to us, coupled with, again, the constraints of the design system, to really radically create these radically adaptive experiences. So this is the kind of stuff that we're sort of picking at, and it's really interesting times. But I think the long story short of this whole bit is AI is part of our design system toolkit now, but also design systems are a part of our AI toolkit, right? But, so that's the kind of brass tacks of what we're up to. But sort of taking a step back, it is just worth acknowledging just how freaking weird this is. And this is speaking as someone talking about web design and development standing on the stage of a drag musical show. This is weird. Really weird. And we are figuring out what the hell this all means. These are strange times, right? It's both exciting, it's both funny, it's both... weird times, right? And it's really causing us to this is a moment of collective self-reflection, you know? This is a time to be like, who are we? What are we doing here? What am I doing with my hands? What is a designer? How do I do this? What is a developer? How do I do this? What does it mean to be a designer, right, in all of this? And I think that, like, we're all figuring this out, right, in real time, right now. This is all sort of playing out in front of our eyes. But I do want to stress that it's so incredibly important. I think that this really is this really important moment in our field, in the world. Really, the rise of this type of tooling and technology really does hold up a lens and say, like, what are we doing? What are we here for? What are we doing? And friends, I'm here to tell you that you are more than a rectangle creator. I mean that from the bottom of my heart, because whenever we're working with teams, going through it myself, watching my brother go through it, it's like, oh my God, like, what do we do? Like, this stuff can, like, splat this stuff out in, like, 30 seconds. What does that mean for us? And I'm not here to paint, like, a rosy picture about it, because I think that there really are, like, some scary ramifications of that. But what I also am here to say is, like, you are more than a rectangle creator. And I think that what we need more than ever in this moment in time and moving forward is for all of us to give ourselves more credit than we currently do, right? A lot of people, we work with a lot of different teams, a lot of people that think of themselves as rectangle creators. And it's our job to say, I am a thinking, feeling, loving, ethical person, right? And we need to show up to work like that. And we need to realize that our jobs as designers and developers sure sometimes involves that kind of production level stuff, but it's so much more than that. And I think that this moment in time is a really great opportunity for us to strive to just be more and use your whole brains, use your whole selves, use your intuition to solve the big problems in front of us. And sure, sometimes that involves drawing rectangles and writing some code, but, like, what we're here to do is to make the world a better place. And I think in this moment in time, like, we need to be committed to that and really focus on that. So with that, everybody, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Brett. Will you join me for a little conversation?
Sure.
Oh, Brett's Jam. Do you want to mention?
Oh, yeah, let's mention that.
Yeah, so what is that, Brett?
So tomorrow night, we're playing music. If you play music, you should come play music. That's literally the brief.
That's a good brief. I can do that.
It's like, there's nothing beyond that. It's a pure moment. Yeah, if you want to sing, if you have a good voice, or even if you don't have a good voice, but you like singing, come and show up, and we're going to play some music. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Excellent. Fantastic.
So,
all right. Please join me with bananas and conversation here. Thank you so much for the wonderful, inspiring session.
Thank you.
I think it's, for me, it's always interesting to kind of see how far we have come and also how far we still have to go.
Yeah.
It's always kind of this kind of almost like a perpetual story that we're experiencing on the web.
Yes.
And I think that many people are often, I mean, at least this is how I feel, often kind of stuck in, like, we need to do this now in this sprint, we need to deliver, and then you kind of jump from being stuck in this vicious circle over and over and over and over again.
Yes.
There is really quickly came the first question from a concerned citizen. And the question is, do you have any tips on how to convince a designer who is convinced that they really need 4 fonts with different weights and 50 shades of gray?
Just punch him in the face. It's like, no, you know.
We do not
there's-
advocate for
there's-
violence at this conference.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't either. But, you know, mentally.
You will
No,
need to-
there's
yeah.
things like web page tests. There's things like I was showing in my workshop yesterday. It's like web page test is a great tool. You can show your website racing against your competitors, and when you like load in 17 fonts, it takes a while for that page to load, right? So and performance is design. That's what, like a blog post I wrote in like 2013, right? It's like the design, like. That designer needs to learn that design is not just how things look. And unfortunately, and I didn't get a chance to go on like a tear in the talk, but it's like the way that the tooling has evolved has kind of created this like good enough zone for designers to just kind of hang out in static design tools. And so there's a lot of like atrophying going on about the more sort of like holistic user experience that goes into the medium of the web, right? Things like real interactivity, real animation, real performance, real font loading, real browser quirks, and things like that. It's like all of that is part of the design, but I feel like there's now like this entire new like kind of class of designers who are relegated to Figma rectangle creators, and I would encourage that designer to like cultivate a curiosity with a helping hand and maybe a punch in the face.
Friendly.
To get friendly punch in the face. That's a good way of putting it. But like you know, like it's the old Steve Jobs thing, right? Design isn't how it looks, it's how it works. And like we've lost that plot big time, I think, as an industry. But also to speak to what you're saying is like there's this like siloing and this very dehumanizing part. Like the tailorization of the design process is a freaking tragedy. Like it really is. Everyone is looking at the ticket in front of them, and the only concern is around how to get that thing pushed over into the next column. And that's a fucking shame. Like we have to do better than that. Like this, like we have to ruin that world because design is how it works. And in order to consider that holistic aspect of it, we need designers, developers, product people, everyone putting their heads together and actually like solving problems together, right? And we need the time and the space and the ability to do that. And sure, eventually, maybe somewhere along the lines, you can sort of slice things up into these tiny little tasks. But we jump right into it, and everyone's in their own little like kind of matrix cubes, like Gantt chart, Jira ticket bullshit. So, anyways, you get the idea.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of excitement about this option of having kind of a simple way to translate basically your intent via or through the lens of design system into the actual work, right?
Yeah.
Stephen is wondering, translating existing code into web components. Can you explain how exactly you set it up? How that work? Is it a public Figma plugin? How does it work?
Yeah, so how it works, ultimately like GPT or Claude Sonnet or whatever is like the engine that's actually kind of like receiving these requests, right? And those things are getting more sophisticated with being able to provide it or wrap it in some context that basically says, we have this, or here's like a couple sample components from our component library. Build more stuff that looks like that,
Okay.
and it will
So
do a pretty dang good
It's
job.
not like a sophisticatedly, like a massively trained thing.
No, it's super light. Like I think that's what we've been finding is that even through our adventures in this, like when we did that webinar I showed a couple of videos from, that was like 3 or 4 months ago, the results as we've been sort of getting into this with our clients and stuff, just even in that short amount of time has been astounding, right? And like really, so like what we're doing when it comes to like building a page using the design system, it's literally just like a table of contents. Here's the accordion, it has these props and like what you would see in like Storybook, right? Like the documentation for Storybook. It's literally just like kind of taking all that like source code, just here's what's here, and you just tell it. You don't even have to feed it the whole code base. You just feed it this like table of contents, and then it will parse that and return results. So it's pretty pretty wild.
That's quite impressive. Victor is wondering, native operating systems can have opinionated implementations of native controls, like iOS and Android with date and time input elements.
Yep.
How do you think it will change in the future, or how should developers leverage it?
Yeah, so with things where like there are kind of OS level controls, the general advice is, at least for like iOS and Android, is those are pretty like well considered, and a lot of times like our custom date picker component that half of you are building kind of takes a back seat, and we sort of like lean on like the operating system level things. And as time goes on, like, you know, when we really pick at like what's it all for, well, we want people to be able to select dates, and we want people to do that in the most like efficient way possible, right? So us interjecting ourselves with our custom stuff because the designer wants to make some, you know, a drop shadow that the world has never seen before. It's like that's not a justifiable reason to sort of break with the native control and create your own custom one.
Right. Well, we have a lot of questions. Well, first of all, thank you so much, everyone, for adding them in the Google Doc. It's fantastic to see it coming in. Katie is wondering, I would like to know what belongs in a design system, what doesn't. For example, padding, margins, do they belong to a system? Are also atoms allowed to change for an A/B test? And if so, do the altered atoms have to be tested on a product level?
Yeah, the framing of the question is interesting, but there's some good stuff there. It's like, are you allowed to? Yes, you're allowed to do whatever you want. You're a human being. People get weird with structures and with rules and stuff like that, and where it's just like, again, it kind of gets into that like pattern police stuff that I was talking about earlier. It's like you're allowed to do whatever the hell you want. If you want to burn down the design system and build it from the ground up tomorrow, you can do that. Like, you have agency. You're a human being. That's just to remind you of that. But what she's getting at is it's like when you learn new things, when it's out in the wild, when new best practices come into play, when you read a good article on Smashing Magazine that says, oh, we've been doing that thing wrong, change that stuff, right? Like that stuff is important, and it should be well considered. It should be well vetted. Doing tests, making sure that you're doing your due diligence is obviously a good idea. But I do think that this is like one of the biggest misconceptions with design systems is that it is this like, you set it up once and you can never touch it again, right? That is like a recipe for disaster, right? You have to get into that game of continuous improvement and iterating, launching, releasing, shipping, iterating, and making that part of the practice.
Okay. Well, there's so many questions, well, I really almost feel lost here. But there is one that I will have to probably, when we have to wrap up. David is wondering.
Uh-oh.
I like your shirts. Where can we get them?
Internet.
The internet, this is it? You just go to the internet.
Yeah.
And
I'll have to look at where this one's from. But basically, like, I did this giant concert in August called Frostapalooza, and leading up to it, I like started looking at outfits for the show, and so my Instagram feed became like nothing but just increasingly crazy shirts. So
this is exciting. I mean, maybe we should be expecting a design system like accompanying or accommodating for a shop that would sell them.
I love it.
I think this is the future. This is the future. I think we have a nice setup.
Yeah,
right?
I'll jump in and answer questions on the Google Doc. So keep asking them. So thank you all.
All right. Brad, hug.